Good Monday morning to you. This is Dan Kopp, and I'm coming to you live from Madison, Wisconsin. And joining me today, like always, is Ty Firsching.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ty. I'm coming at you from Uganda, Entebbe specifically. So, as a caveat, I always like to say if the power goes out, it's because it went out. And I'll be back on shortly, and Dan will just pick up the reins and go with it while I'm readjusting my stuff on this end.
So just to clarify, if the power goes out, it goes out. Is that what you're telling us?
Yes, that's absolutely what I'm telling you.
All right, you heard it here first, people. He is a profound statement bearing today. So, as always, we welcome our audience. If you've got any questions or comments, feel free to jump in the chat box if you're joining us live and let us know what you think, or if you have a question or quandary, and we'll do our best to help you through it live on air. As always, I want to remind you, Ty mentioned it, sometimes he's got power outages, Wi-Fi issues, whatever. I will continue without him. He may freeze, he may disappear. Hopefully he comes back. But at times, due to the nature of where he lives in Uganda, there's sometimes some issues with him being able to jump on live. So we're here today. So far, so good. If you are watching the replay, feel free to comment. You can always contact us via LinkedIn, and our emails are at the bottom of the screen. And in essence, we are talking about becoming an enhanced leader. Today's topic is personal state. We brought it up last week, so we thought we'd sort of dive deeper into it today. And Ty, take it away.
All right. Thanks, Dan. So as Dan mentioned, we talked about it last week briefly at the end. Last week's discussion was on emotional intelligence. And there's a difference between personal state and emotional intelligence, but they work really well together. And the whole idea, last week, we kind of came on strong where emotional intelligence doesn't have to be in your face. And that's what we're trying to get at. And we're dealing with, on the emotional side of things, we kind of deal with our personal state. How does that look like? So the name of my program is Active Personal Engagement. And we have three components of that. We have active discernment, personal state, and engaged values. And I've already covered engaged values in an earlier episode. You're more than welcome to go back and look at it. I'll talk a little bit about it today, and we're going to hit personal state today. So what is personal state? The whole idea behind personal state, and this is where I, after going to leadership conferences, after seeing people speak just for my own interest, they come down and they talk about your inner peace. And it didn't matter where I was. That was the key word, inner peace, inner peace, inner peace. And I really disagree with that. I think the majority of it has something to do with inner peace, but there's so many factors that are external or communicable or that affect your inner peace. So it's just not focusing on your inner peace. It's focusing on everything around you. So in order to get that aura of peace, I use two things. Okay, the first thing is I really like old words, and I like the ancient Greeks always have words for everything, and because their language is so much richer and fuller than ours, I define the personal state as eiréné. That's Eirene, and that's an ancient Greek term that really means peace, but because they spoke it conceptually, it dealt with external peace, internal peace. It dealt with the peace around in the community and globally, that type of peace. It mainly focused, more than 50% is on internally, but all the other factors that come to your internal peace are from outside. It's not always from inside. Oh, well, that just disturbs me inside. I take offense to that. Well, you're taking offense to something. You're not taking offense to something that's already inside you. You're taking offense to something externally. So I stay away from the term inner peace specifically because it kind of goes, find your center, find your inner peace, do some yoga. I'm not saying those are bad things. I'm just saying that it restricts it. This is unrestricted peace, okay? And it's all brought about by external and internal factors. The other thing is, and I'm just going to say, you have that intuition. Okay, this is the other part, personal state. You have that intuition, that gut feeling. I'm just going to say, for me, it's my heart. I think the heart leads the gut feeling. I mean, it informs the gut feeling. If you're having something wrench you when you're making a decision, and you're like, oh man, and you have a bad feeling about it, your best bet is to probably take a step back and identify what that intuition or that gut feeling is. Dan has a whole, and before I go on, Dan, you actually have a chapter written on gut feeling. So I want you to weigh in on this,
Well, thank you. A lot of thoughts came to mind when you were speaking, and when we've talked about this off air frequently, that both in your approach to life, Ape, none of your tenets can exist exclusive of the others. So when you were talking about your inner peace and then how it's restricted, I was thinking about your engaged values, because as we discussed in an earlier episode, you may aspire to have core values, but that too is restrictive. In your engaged values, if you explore those, you may not be going down the path of positivity all the time, and you may realize that you're engaged in some negative stuff that you would prefer not to be engaged in. That's going to affect your personal state. Getting back to Ty's point, there are external factors. It could be your own behavior and how you deal with things, and it's your engaged values that are affecting your personal state. And I think he's right. It comes back to your gut and how you react to things. I call it gut leadership. He was talking, he leads more from the heart. I think the three are intertwined: your mind, your brain, and your gut, or your mind and your brain. I think those are the same things: your mind, your heart, and your gut. But it comes down to trusting your gut, and the more veteran you get in a position, in a role, in leadership, in life, you've encountered things that are going to make you more apt to be able to successfully trust your gut. That is not to say somebody who is younger, a generation behind ours, isn't good at what they do. They aren't great leaders. They aren't in tune with everything. But with limited experiences come the tendency to be less apt to trust your gut. And the more experiences you have and the more successful things you've encountered and the myriad of things you can do and lead types of things, you're going to be more apt to be able to trust your gut and be more successful. But it does come back to personal state and how it's linked to everything else you're doing. It's not just inner peace. It may result in inner peace once you focus on it, but it's not just about inner peace. So I appreciate that point of view, Ty, that it's very limiting. It's not like we did with exactly what we did with engaged values versus core values. Core values is limiting. Inner peace is limiting.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan. Yeah, and you mentioned the seasoned leader, how it may be easier. And there's a little modicum of wisdom that comes along with being seasoned, because this goes back to really emotional intelligence, just briefly, because your personal state kind of keeps your emotional intelligence, it keeps each other in check. Okay, because you don't want to fly off the handle emotionally, because that would not be emotionally intelligent. But what allows you to do that is the whole idea of your inner peace and understanding where it's coming from. Is it external? Is it internal, that I already had a problem with at some point in my life? Or is it just you're having a bad day? So you want to learn how to keep it in check. And you mentioned engaged values. The engaged values are awesome. We have, your inherent engaged values and your aspiring engaged values. And both of those create another system of checks and balances with personal state, which means it can exist without the other, but if they exist together, it's very cohesive. And we have active discernment, which we'll talk about another time. But that's really a qualified discernment component within your decision-making process. And so all three of those combined, if you leave out one of them, you're going to have something not quite right in your dynamic view of leadership, or your dynamic philosophy of leadership. For instance, if you leave out personal state out of engaged values and you don't let them interact, you have a lack of emotional connection. You can burn out so quick because you're just going, we have to meet this value. You don't have, it's just, you're weighing everything on one component of your leadership skills. Okay, you're not balancing it out. And there would be a rigid application of your values. We can't deter from the values because these are our values. And then all of a sudden, what if something's going on behind the scenes that your value really hadn't taken into consideration? Then we have this absence of personal state that is just like thrusting all the responsibility in your decision-making process and the way you lead. It prevents you from being flexible. The one thing it does that I like is when you're leading and you're taking into consideration all components, active discernment, but especially engaged values and personal state, is the authenticity of your decision-making practices and your leadership. If you're putting both of those engaged values and personal state together, you are credible in an authenticity way. I'm losing the word, but anyway.
Authentic comes to mind.
Thank you. Authentic. There's so many syllables there. The alliteration was killing me.
I bet if it were in Greek, you would have been able to whip it out easily.
Absolutely.
All right. Yeah, I just think of equilibrium, and the second you stray and focus only on one and focus, you said, well, let's talk about values. What if they don't align with who you are at your core? You're going to have problems. Through a leadership lens, you're going to make decisions. That's what leaders do, good ones anyway. So that some leaders try not to make decisions, and they technically aren't leaders. But if you're making decisions as a leader and they're not aligned with your engaged values, and you haven't used active discernment, and your personal state's out of whack too. You're not going to sleep well at night. And not to say that you align them and you're going to sleep well, because sometimes we make decisions as leaders that here's 3, which one stinks the worst? And you still have to make a decision. And I brought this up on a previous episode, all the decisions that were made COVID related. I'm pretty sure there weren't any leaders that wanted to shut down businesses or schools, etc. But those were decisions that had to be made for the good of the people. And that at the time, that was the thought process. But it didn't make them decisions that were like, oh, it was cut and dry. That was easy. I'm going to rest easy tonight because that was a logical decision and everybody loved it. No, it was just the best of the worst decisions. So you're still going to talk about your personal state when you have as a leader, but when you try to align the active discernment along with the gauge values, your personal state is in equilibrium, and it's easier to find that inner peace. But you've got to focus on the external stuff too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it all comes together. That's what life is about, right? I mean, you just can't, I'm just going to focus on my internal peace and forget what's going around you. It does not make sense.
Right.
It makes perfect. And I like the whole idea about equilibrium. That is perfect, because there's a triad of equilibrium in my philosophy where they all have to work together and come to fruition in the leadership philosophy of APE, like that. Another thing that alleviates, which everybody is one of the number 1 or 2 problems with work today, is stress. It alleviates stress, or it reduces it significantly if you're taking into consideration how you are feeling, right? Your personal state, how that is interacting with what you hold true as your engaged values and the way you make decisions. And really that wraps it up and sums up personal state for me. So I don't have any other thing to say unless you want to close it out, because I see.
No, I agree. I thought, that's a perfect way to describe it. It's the equilibrium, and the 3 work hand in hand. And it doesn't make leadership easy, but it's a lot easier having that alignment than not having that alignment.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the whole goal for us in this whole enhanced leadership project we're doing. And as we continue to mesh our 2 philosophies, Dan, which for those who don't know, that's what we're doing. And we're creating a more comprehensive and dynamic program that is adaptable and malleable in a situation. So,
correct. Love it. Good, succinct summary. So thank you for that. All right, we're about ready to wrap it up for this week. Our previous videos can be viewed on LinkedIn on both of our profiles and both of our company profiles, which are Leading Like a Buffalo and Trade Secrets. But We also have a YouTube channel called Enhanced Leadership. So feel free to jump on that and subscribe. We'll upload every weekly video to that, and you're always welcome to reach out to us. You can reach out to us via email. Again, our email's at the bottom of the screen, dan@leadingbuffalo.com and Ty at tradesecrets.com, or you can reach out to us via DM on LinkedIn or however else you want to do it. Feel free to reach out. We are here to help. My mission in life is to help other leaders, and this is one of the ways I'm doing that. So, Ty, any last words?
No, appreciate the time. Good to see you again. We'll be back next week, same channel, same time. Wanted to go Batman. I wanted to go Batman, and I didn't do it. Same bat channel, same time. Yeah.
Right on, right on. All right, people, we're talking enhanced leadership. This is simply good leadership, and you can do it. Good luck.
Yeah, take care, everyone.